2025. This is What is HOA? What is HOA is brought to you by Zayuk. Zayuk is a property management technology company. We provide inspections and software and a platform for you and various homeowners to manage your assets and manage your property. And here today in What is HOA, we usually go through the current events of HOA. So we'll do that now. There was a pretty serious event in, give me one moment, in Florida today. A dispute over HOA eviction led to double homicide in Port St. Lucie. Ongoing dispute within HOA appears to have been a catalyst for double homicide and hostage situation in Port St. Lucie neighborhood. Documented disturbances between the suspect and the victim, who served as the treasurer for Tropical East HOA. The second victim was not on an HOA board, but police say his surviving wife served as the board's secretary. PSL PD says Golden and other HOA board members had retained legal representation and were in the process of evicting 62-year-old from his home. Investigators say that suspect had been ordered to vacate the property by December 14th, 2025. Violence began around 3:15 p.m. Monday when suspect allegedly shot both victims in separate homes near Southeast Tropical Circle. After the shootings, they entered a third residence and held a 77-year-old woman hostage, who was released unharmed after more than 2 hours of negotiations with SWAT teams, drones, and crisis negotiators. Later barricaded himself and told officers he shot himself. And drones confirmed the injury, and SWAT officers entered to find him critically wounded, and he was transported to a hospital but died. Wow. So it seems that was a double homicide and suicide due to a dispute stemming from an HOA eviction between everyone 54, 75, 77, and 62 years old. The victims were 54, 75, 77, and the suspect 62. Yeah, it was a double homicide suicide. That's awful. And that's a very serious and extreme case. I have heard of that before. I believe it might have even been last year where I forgot which state, but I think a community manager was killed by a gun, and it's difficult. That's unexcusable, and it's not normal, and it's horrific, and it's it's tough to understand. That's just your home. You're looking to own real estate, and it escalates like that. There's really no words to say. But just understanding that when you take a position of leadership like that, you do have these sort of responsibilities. And as a board member, you will be seen possibly as responsible, even though you're just acting in accordance with the board. And it's important. And there's really, I'm not even sure what to say. I don't know if there is anything to say, but understanding that when you go onto a board, when you go into a management position, you're taking on a place of responsibility and have some serious obligations that often upset people tremendously. Okay, we're going to move on. Okay. From the CBS 19 News, Heritage Hunt Homeowners Association has agreed to a settlement of $425,000 with the U.S. Department of Justice in exchange for the closure of the department's investigation into the HOA's April 2020 Paycheck Protection Program loan that allegedly violated the False Claims Act. On an October 14th letter to residents from the HOA board of directors said, without admitting fault in the matter, the HOA agreed to effectively reimburse slightly more than the amount of the initial loan, worth $397,600 at the time of issuance and forgiven in June 2021, with an interest at $401,642. This $425,000 settlement was signed October 1, and repayment via resident contribution will start January 1, 2026. Spokesperson from the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. Heritage Hunt Homeowners Association also declined to comment. Board of Directors has approved a one-time special assessment in the amount of $343 payable in 6 monthly installments beginning on January 1st, 2026, or $57.17 monthly. So this is one of the nice things, although none of it's really great, but $425,000 loan, and the residents are going to be paying $350 each over 6 months. That's still a lot, but one thing that people tend to overlook is when you have an HOA of a lot of people, you share costs like this across many people, and it's important because some costs are so extreme, like construction costs or insurance costs, that they take a huge amount, but compare them to, say a single family home, you're still going to have insurance costs, and depending on the type of location you want to live, a lot of amenities are going to be way cheaper if you use community-based residency, HOAs. Heritage Hunt is 55 and over community in Gainesville, near Interstate 66 and Route 29. $4,000 owed to the realtor's attorney who initiated the claim. Approximately $200,000 in legal fees to the law firm of Crawwell Mooring, and $925,000 in admin and printing fees. In 2020, the HOA paid outside contractor Up to Par and its 45 employees for the operation of its food, beverage, and golf amenities. According to documents provided to Inside Nova, Up to Par requested the HOA submit a PPP loan so their contract employees could get paid during the pandemic. That is a mistake, and that is what the DOJ is investigating. Really interesting. That's important to consider. I mean, you have a vendor there telling your HOA that you have to take out a government loan, and not sure of the dynamics. That could be more dynamics behind that. Where's the management company? How is the manager interacting between the two and feeding information? Like, how did the board vote upon taking out that loan? Who actually took out that loan? As the PPP loan was incumbent on the HOA having employees on its payroll, the HOA allegedly violated the False Claims Act and the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act in applying for the loan. HOA's board of directors said Heritage Hunt faced up to $1.2 million in legal fees if the community litigated and lost. Legal fees can get very intense, and it's a tough situation. So here's an incident. Plymouth homeowner with naturally planted yard battles with HOA to keep it. Started planting the yard of her new home in Churchill Farm subdivision in Plymouth, Minnesota. Thought it might one day become a neighborhood gathering place. She hired a company to install a meadow of low-growing grasses in the front and tall swaying prairies native in the back. The property has become a focal point in the neighborhood, but not in the way she wanted. People have driven over the yard and mowed it without her permission. She enlisted the police and private detective to find the offenders, and now some neighbors stay away from her property. Conflict escalated when she sued the HOA, asking court to rule that fines it had levied against her for unenforceable because of state law. Argument could test the limits of that law, which says cities and towns can't restrict native landscaping, but it says nothing about HOAs. The HOA answered in court, writing that Scott maintained her yard in an unsightly manner to create a condition which is indecent and offensive to the census, and was fined $250 by the HOA as of that filing. A board member met Scott at a neighborhood event and urged her to submit her plans to an architecture review committee. It was the first such request, but Scott refused because they wasn't making any architectural changes. At the time she bought the house, there had been no rules barring the plantings. City of Plymouth limited how much of a yard could be converted from turf grass, but the ordinance was changed after the state outlawed those restrictions in 2023. There's often a sense of grandfathering things in, but you never know. If it really seems unsightly, landscaping is a big deal in HOAs, and anything exterior that is able to be seen from a common area is usually not lightly taken. And based off of my interpretation of that, I'm not a lawyer, none of this is legal advice, but if state law, I mean, we'll see how that goes. That'll be an interesting case to see what occurs there. Okay, great. So this was from last month. Noblesville family nears deal with HOA after fighting over wheelchair ramp for paralyzed teen. Noblesville family, Indiana, close to agreement with their HOA after months of conflict over the construction of a ramp and deck on the front of their home. "16-year-old was on a trampoline last year when he landed headfirst, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Since then, it's been a long road of surgeries, pain, and learning to adapt." One challenge from their neighborhood association as they remodeled their home to make it accessible for the 16-year-old. The family requested approval from Morse Point HOA to build a ramp and deck, which would help the teen get to the front door. The deck would let him enjoy the front yard. But the HOA initially denied the deck and sent back revised sketches of the ramp. After weeks of back and forth between lawyers on both sides, a compromise may be in sight, pending a signature from both parties. As long as we are willing to remove the structure if and when we were to move, then the HOA would forward in allowing us to have the ramp and deck structure. They're grateful to finally move forward. It never should have taken this long, the homeowner says. They're angry. It took 3 months. After months of obstacles, say they hope this uphill battle inspires others to climb theirs. Great. And interesting, I mean, most people who work with their HOA, most people are pretty reasonable, and that seems like a reasonable request. And 3 months, this is kind of like a government body, and most HOAs don't work too quickly, and it's understandable that something like that would occur. It's very tough when you have something as serious as a teenager who has been paralyzed in a freak accident, and it's very difficult when the home that you live in can't accommodate your teenager. So it's understandable, but it's also good that the board allowed that individual to make the changes and in a way that doesn't affect the entire community, in the sense that when they sell the home, they'll have to destructure that ramp and deck. Okay. So we've spoken about this before. Homeowners face tripled HOA fees after property management company allegedly mismanages funds. Local townhouse community are being forced to pay hundreds of dollars in additional fees during the holiday season after the property management company allegedly mismanaged their homeowner association funds. And this is something I want to talk about because I've seen it multiple times, and it's important to consider. Just because you get paper documents that state your account balances are at a certain place does not mean that they're at that place. Documents can be forged, and if you're looking at something that's a reflection of an Excel document that isn't your actual connection to your bank account, these numbers can be forged. And I've seen it again and again over these 3 or 4 months of doing what is HOA and the HOA live stream, is that very often homeowners don't have a direct connection to their bank accounts. And that's what Zayuk Safe provides you. It's a safe. It gives you insights into your property's financial hygiene directly, and it gives you the tools to not have to trust someone. It's a trustless system, and We need to work towards a trustless system, and I think most people understand why. It's a huge part of it's you don't want to put people in places of trust because they'll take advantage of the situation. Happens time and time again. Financial burden stems from problems with Gasser Property Management, company that had been managing the community's finances. In August, critical insurance policies for Provincetown lapsed, leading to the discovery that Gasser Property Management wasn't licensed for business and wasn't paying to keep insurance policies current. The board fired Gasser and hired a new management company, Gertner. In a letter to homeowners, the board revealed that money residents thought existed in Gasser accounts was actually missing. They said it was because the funds we had in HOA are no longer there, said one resident. Special assessment requires homeowners to pay an additional $300 per month for 3 months on top of their regular dues, and many have difficulty paying that. And it's very difficult. I mean, we've spoken about it multiple times. What you know, when you have a number that you get for your HOA or your mortgage, you expect that number to stay consistent. And for your mortgage, as long as you have a fixed rate, that usually is the case. And when that doesn't happen with your HOA, it becomes a huge burden. And how you approach that HOA and the sunk costs and the cost value to you changes. And when the HOA fees increase or you get a special assessment, it can be very difficult to handle. And understanding the financial hygiene, the asset hygiene, and the governance system is really important, because most of what we speak about is related to those three items. It's asset hygiene, financial hygiene, and governance system. People have a problem with the rules, or their finances are being not maintained properly, or the assets in the homeowner association on the property are degrading. Very often, those pillars of the business, HOAs are business, are what drive problems. And making sure that the integrity of those three pillars, the asset hygiene integrity, the financial hygiene integrity, and the governance integrity are all functioning, give you a basis to more comfortably own within that property. Here in 11 Alive, I see a highlight a new Georgia nonprofit is gathering homeowner stories to push for stronger oversight and accountability in homeowners associations. Here's a very extreme incident. Parents of Volusia boy killed by dogs file lawsuit against HOA management company. Michael Millay, the third, mauled by two dogs and died on January 13th. His parents filed a lawsuit on Wednesday, a week ago. The wrongful death lawsuit is against the HOA and the property management company where the incident occurred, claiming the HOA was negligent in its failure to maintain the front gate in a proper working condition despite knowledge that it was broken and inoperable for an extended period of time. It says the management company knew the inoperable condition of the front gate and the presence of dangerous dogs entering the community. Two dogs attacked the 8-year-old boy just before 5 p.m. in an area off County Road 15A. We'll continue. The owner of the two dogs that mauled the 8-year-old boy to death are facing felony charges. Called the boy's injuries horrific and said dogs had been terrorizing the neighborhood for weeks. The boy was riding his bike with a friend when he stopped to pet one of the dogs. That is when the attack happened. Sustained 12 bites and had some broken bones, and believes it was not long before he died. Wow. That's a very extreme case, but I want to highlight something, and that is how small it may seem. A broken gate. Oh, so what? I mean, these things are obvious when you pay attention to the small things. And when you don't pay attention to the small things, they just blow right past you, and it becomes a huge burden. And this is why Zayuk is so powerful, because we come to your property, we take a reality capture inspection, we provide you and your property the context, the visual context to understand and to work with your property and to maintain the hygiene, the asset hygiene. This is what I spoke about just before this. Asset hygiene. The fence wasn't functioning appropriately, and supposedly, allegedly, by that lawsuit, people knew that dogs were coming in due to the broken fence. But the basis of that lawsuit and the liability is asset hygiene, and it's a huge issue. And properties need reality capture. And if you're in an HOA, if you're on an HOA board, seriously consider reaching out to Zayuk and getting us to do a reality capture and providing you the tools to manage your property effectively. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you all have a great day and are